Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks again, everybody, for joining today for our webinar. We're going to be covering machine learning, content management automation with Boone Ai. We are recording today's session. We're going to have the recording made available to you and to everybody that registered afterwards, so that you can go back and refer to it or pass it along to your colleagues that weren't able to make it today with us live. There is a Q&A feature inside of the Zoom webinar. So if you have any questions as we're going through this, feel free to type them in. We've got some time allotted at the end of today's session to come back around and answer those. And of course, we're happy to continue the discussion afterwards in a more one-on-one kind of setting. So just a brief introduction. This is Jason Warman. I run the technology group here at PacGenesis. Today I'm joined by Kyle Fox, Senior Director of Sales at Boone Ai, along with Danny Teasling, Senior Director of Engineering at Boone Ai. And as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a deep dive into this interesting new technology and how it can help you with your digital content workflows. Just to sort of level set for folks that aren't familiar, PacGenesis has been around since 2012, primarily working early on with organizations to transform their software delivery pipelines and, implement ALM and CI/CD type of workflows. A few years ago, we shifted to include working with customers on their digital content workflows. First with a premier partnership with IBM Aspera, followed by partnerships with Fifth Kind and Erdetto. We're based in Austin, but we work with a large number of customers all around the US and actually have recently expanded into Europe. Our team does come from largely from a background in digital content workflows, and that's really where we see a lot of this kind of interaction with our customers, is that sort of extended life cycle around what's happening with your digital content. In particular, if you sort of follow the way that these things make their way through these stages, typically most of our customers are working with something like IBM Aspera for that first bit, right? So that content collaboration, finalization, even out to distribution, really any kind of large file movement is often done through IBM Aspera or something similar. That next step comes into play on how to protect it. We have an excellent partnership with Erdetto and their tracemark forensic watermarking technology that is pretty unique and allows protection of that content as that next step in the process. From there, most of our customers are then taking those finalized assets into MAM systems like Fifth Kind or others. And then really the next step is what happens next, as far as once that content is in the management system and you're looking for ways to, of course, monetize it, but also to automate some of the tasks that happen at this next level. Right, these are things that customers come to us that are done with largely by humans now, that are very kind of labor intensive, resource intensive tasks like image classification, content moderation, metadata tagging. These are all excellent candidates for automation, but navigating into that is a pretty daunting task for a lot of customers. What kind of development does it take? Where do I even get started? And that's really where Boone Ai comes in, and what we'd like to present to you today. So with that, let me go ahead and hand it off to Kyle Fox from Boone Ai, and we can take it from there. Kyle.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot, Jason. So first off, I just want to say thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to join and attend today. I'm going to assume most of you probably don't know me, because if you did, you'd have probably found something better to do with your Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, than to listen to me speak for 5-10 minutes. But if you do, thank you very much for joining. Second thing, you're probably wondering, I came here for Zeroa, I got Boone Ai, what's going on? It's not a bait and switch at all. So we've essentially just formally launched the product yesterday. And so with that, we wanted to do kind of a formal, rename, rebrand, relaunch. So you came here for Zeroa, you got Boone Ai, but it's essentially the same technologies. So that being said, so who are we? Who is the team here? So from a company perspective, most of us have spent a lot of time in the industry on one side of the coin or the other. A majority of our team is Emmy award-winning, technologists from different groups like Disney, Sony, Weta, NVIDIA, and so forth. But a majority of the team, especially from a development perspective, has spent a majority of their career developing tools, at studios for media and entertainment use cases. So that being said, so AI and ML. I know a lot of people have been hearing about AI and ML for a long time. It's definitely been a buzzword for years, and especially from a media perspective. I think a lot of people always hear, AI, ML, the things that it can do for a business. How's it going to help us? And there is a lot of use cases for AI, for ML in the media space, and some of those we've kind of outlined here. But just kind of contextually, walk through it. I mean, a very simple one, that a lot of people look at is like, if I've got a large edit team, right, and they're constantly looking for content, either from a news perspective, or maybe it's a marketing team, or who knows, right? But they want to be able to find content. AI is wonderful in those types of use cases to make it easy for your editors to end up finding very specific content that they need. Another great use case for that is, auto tagging assets with, logos and different things like that. So you can better identify ad partners. If you want to be able to better identify explicit material, explicit content, especially as you're going to try to build profiles, you want to build that into your workflow so that you can segregate content and identify explicit things based on regions and things like that to better automate your workflows. You don't have to hand tag and spend a lot of time doing that. AI is absolutely perfect for that. But I think on top of that, having heard about like all of the great ways that you can use AI and use ML throughout the industry, the benefits that it can bring, it's always kind of funny to find out how few people have actually deployed a machine learning project. And especially when you see statistics like this, where it's like 87% of data science projects end up, failing and never going into production. And when you really kind of step back as to why is that, like if there's so many benefits to this, why is it that so few people are actually utilizing AI or actually utilizing ML? And I think from the side of the coin on actually trying to go to customers and implement AI projects or implement machine learning projects, what we've generally seen is that most teams, especially in media, are small, right? It's a small engineering team, maybe 6 people, 8 people, something like that. And being tasked with a machine learning project is not simple. There are a lot of steps to it. You have to generally have very specialized skills, use very specialized tool sets. It takes a lot of time to actually get the content that you need to train models, to build models, and then to deploy models, take those into production. It's a very difficult and lengthy process. And in a lot of cases, most teams just don't have the time and or the resources to do it. It's also very expensive. And what I've generally seen from a media perspective, most organizations don't yet know which use case is going to provide them with the best ROI. So asking someone to spend, $1 million is generally out of question, right? $500,000 is generally out of question. Even $100,000, when somebody doesn't understand what the ROI is going to be yet, asking someone to make that type of investment up front to understand and to go through the experimentation process is usually not something that teams are able to justify. So that's where Boone comes in. And that's really what we've been focused on from a technology perspective is how do we take the business risk off of the customer? And the way that we look to do that is essentially make deploying a machine learning project very akin to deploying software. And so we focus on a very no-code, low-code solution, with the whole concept being around deploy quickly, in under an hour, start running your content through these machine learning APIs so that you can very quickly experiment, and see what results that you're going to get, so you can very quickly identify what ROI you have for the business. So how do we do that? How do we abstract all of these complicated steps in machine learning project away from the end user? Well, very simply, what we've created is a web UI. And you can kind of see here as we highlight this, we focus on visual assets. So images, videos, PDF docs. The concept here is we wanted to make a very simple web UI that basically says, point us to where your data is at. From there, we have a whole lot of, basically all of the ML APIs from these different providers are presented to you in a way that you can simply just choose what you want to run, like a giant checklist. From there, once you finish, you click the go button. We will then manage all of the data preparation for you. So we will take all of those assets and at scale, put them into the appropriate format that each one of those ML APIs need. Say it's something you're doing speech to text, it only runs off of audio. So we'll rip the audio track out, we'll run that through the ML API. From there, we store everything in an Elasticsearch database. Concept there being we want to make it very easy, for you to, be able to index those results, whether or not you're using it for experimentation and testing, or you want to end up using our platform to power something like a search bar in an application or something like that. You want to make it very easy for your users, customers, whoever it is, to natural language search content. Elasticsearch is wonderful for that. The last piece is we also provide a visualization tool. I've never, honestly, in my life met anybody that enjoys looking at JSON, even data scientists. So we want to make it very easy for you to see the results of the ML that you've run through, see what's performing best, whether you're doing A/B testing or whether or not you just simply want to validate the results of your own models. That's what the visualization tool gives you. That's all no code. Very simple. I mean, literally under an hour, you can start running assets through and then start looking at the results via the visualization tool. The only piece that requires any code whatsoever is using our APIs to integrate into the applications, the tools that you currently use. We've been in a lot of situations. We know customers that have essentially been asked to use solutions that are walled gardens. Even if you go back in the history, the old Zoroa solution was a walled garden, and it doesn't ever work. The concept of saying, hey, you want to get, you want to get ML, use our application, use our tool set, we'll replace your MAM and we'll give you ML. It just doesn't work, right? Any ML solution that says that they're going to be a MAM is not going to be, you just can't. It's not their core competency. They're not going to replicate all the functionality in a MAM. Same with an edit tool. You're not going to replace all of the functionality that you get in an Avid or an Adobe using some ML platforms, content creation tools. So we want to make it very simple to integrate these results into the tools that you and your team use every day. Going on to this slide, I kind of like to stop here because mainly, so this is a real quick, snapshot of what our visualization tool looks like. But what I like to go through, on this slide is really to kind of talk about, and picking on GCP here, most customers, when they start a project, if they're going through the process we talked about earlier as an engineering team, they realize, look, I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to invest in a lot of the traditional tools, resources to build my own models. I'm going to go to somebody like Google. Google has label detection. This is great. But it's not like deploying software in that case. It's still an API. You still have to learn an SDK. You still have to develop an application. You still have to prep your assets. You still have to do all of these steps to run them through that API and see what results you get. So what we see with most customers is they end up going through that process. They spend a couple of months and then they get the results back and they realize, well, man, label detection really shouldn't give me anything of any value. So in most cases, they either, kind of stop there, or they start doing the same test again with Azure, with AWS, and so forth, and then just trying to see which gives them the best results. But in most cases, it's not the fact that the individual APIs aren't giving you the results that you need. It's that using APIs by themselves or a single API by itself is never going to give you the results that you need. So in most cases, you need to be able to stack these different ML APIs on top of each other to start giving you the context that makes it easy to find your content. A great example of this, we have a customer of ours who has built their own models, makes it very easy to identify their own characters. And with that, you know, the kind of thing is, if you end up searching for one of their characters, like a superhero, and against the content library, you're going to get a whole lot of results back. But, you know, in that use case, it's not very useful. Now, what is useful is it does make a lot of sense for this customer to have their data science team invest in building a model that identifies their own characters. Totally makes sense to do that. What it doesn't make sense for is for them to spend the time and the money to invest that data science team to build models that identify helicopters and planes and tanks and cars and explosions and all of these other things, right? So in this case, you can use our platform, run your own models through it, and then on top of that, stack the pre-trained models from the other vendors. So then if you have an editor who needs to search for a specific superhero jumping out of a helicopter with an explosion in the background, it's very easy to then find the content that you need very quick as well. So that's it. I promised I was going to not talk for a long time. I was going to turn this over to Danny so y'all could actually see stuff that matters. So Danny, I think from here, I'll stop sharing and kick it over to you.
Oh, there we go. Found my mute button. All right, so here's the actual product. And just to give you a little bit of my background, you know, I've been in the industry for I guess about 10 years now, just working on various projects and things like that. Like previous to this, I led the Technicolor team that built out their dailies viewer Rush and their post suite Pulse. And I've worked on a lot of projects like that, and it's very common to have your small development teams, you know, maybe six to 15 developers, and then you always have to ask, like, we need to add an ML component, and it just has never been possible in my career to be able to do that with a team of that size. And the entire, you know, like basis behind this is to solve really like that problem, to be able to get this stuff in your product and start using it and not have that big outlay and not have to split up teams and everything like that. So when you drop into this platform, we give you this nice little step-by-step process. And what this really does is it isolates the hurdles that we found in our careers to actually doing this ML integration and getting to all the great things that Kyle was just talking about. So your very first step here is to create a data source. And the hurdle that this is helping you get past is this idea of data orchestration, right? Where it can be a 6 to 8 week R&D project just to get set up on a couple of these cloud providers and get all your ML run. You know, you have to set up accounts. If you're not used to these providers, you have to learn all of the SDKs. Your developers are going in, getting everything installed. There's a deployment process where a lot of these things, actually, it's not just hooking up to an API. A lot of them require actually spooling up cloud resources that have to be done. And then you have to read all the documentation to be able to actually execute on that. So that portion is all completely abstracted away. And to get started, you create this data source. And what it does is it ties your source material to all the ML algorithms that you want to run. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started through here. We're just kind of go through the flow of, you know, if I have a bunch of content and I want to run all the ML against it and start to understand if I'm getting insights that are helpful to my media tool chain. So we're going to come in here, create this, we'll give it a name, and then we're going to choose our source material. You know, we are all about multi-cloud, cloud agnostic, so we don't care where the content lives. You know, we prefer it to be in cloud storage. It's the easiest way to process it. So, you know, it can be in AWS, it can be in Azure, it can be in Google, anywhere. We also can just take direct uploads. So if it's on-prem or anything like that, you can push it directly to us. For this example, we'll say it's in Google, and I just give it the location of the bucket where all the files reside. Next up, choose our file types. We accept images, documents, and videos. It's really, you know, our main focus right now is computer vision and also handling some of the audio and things like that. So now we've got our source files selected and the types of files we want to process. And then from here, all it is is this a la carte menu of all the different ML you want to run on this data. We have some of our own proprietary stuff. Then from here, you go through and you just start determining what you want to run from the different providers. We have Google Clouds here. We can do their explicit detection, label detection, logo, object, all of that stuff. And the same for the big three providers. Go through, we could do Google's explicit detection and then put it up and do some A/B testing with Amazon's unsafe detection, all of that stuff. I actually don't have a demo for that because I haven't figured out how to demo unsafe material, but I'll figure it out someday. Again, same thing, come through Azure, just start picking all your ML. Each time I'm clicking one of these checkboxes, you're looking at like a couple weeks of R&D for your engineers just like disappearing. The other thing is we also are positioned to offer more niche providers. So the first one that we chose is Clarify. They have a really nice broad set of pre-trained models that handle a bunch of different very targeted things like food, for example, travel. They have specific wedding detection. I pushed all my wedding photos through here just for fun, and it works really well. But this is really to, show that we're not just targeted at those major providers. And it's the sort of thing where we are 100% customer focused on how we bring in features. And if we're getting requests for different providers, that makes sense. That just gets prioritized, and then more checkboxes appear with more options. Okay, so we've gone through, we've selected all of our ML that we want to run, and then we're going to create this data source. That takes us to step 2, and that's where we'll jump into our job queue. And the hurdle here is the idea that once you get through the orchestration phase and you're able to say, for example, you took one video and you passed it off to all the providers, you now have to handle all of that at scale, right? To actually do a real test of whether or not you're going to get value from the machine learning, you need to run a pretty good sized data set. So when you're looking at running even 1,000 videos or maybe 10,000 videos, you've got to build out some sort of process to actually handle that. So when you kick off this data source, it's going to go through, it's going to crawl that source location. It's going to batch up groups of 25 files, create a separate task for those, and start processing them in parallel. What that processing time is doing is it's going through, it's going to look at all the different ML you selected and determine what types of proxies are required. For example, if you took Apple ProRes material, the machine learning APIs don't accept that. They all have very narrow requirements of the types of videos and images they require. So we're going to handle any of that transcode that's needed. If you want to do audio-based, like some speech-to-text type of things, we'll actually pull the audio tracks out of those videos, rip those out, make the FLAC files that they expect, all of that stuff. So we do the data prep. From there, we go in and we pass it to all the different providers, gather up the results, store it in that Elasticsearch database that Kyle was talking about. So now we're on the final hurdle, and this is where I've seen the most stumbles in my experience, where you did the data orchestration phase. Maybe you're just going through and you're already in the Google ecosystem, and you just got everything going, and you have a workflow management system, and you're able to pretty easily breeze through to running a bunch of videos through one of the Google APIs. The next stumbling block is now you have 10,000 just giant blobs of results, and you have to figure out how to normalize all of those things and then have some sort of visual representation so you can understand whether or not you're gaining any value from the results of the machine learning. So for this, we have our visualizer, and Kyle touched on this a little earlier. So for this project, it is nearly impossible to find production material that you can use for a demo. So a lot of us have worked on set and things like that, and have some more creative side hobbies. So we just went out and we said, you know what, we're just going to go shoot, do a fake production shoot for a rooftop tent commercial. So this is everything you'd expect from, a production shoot. We've got slated shots, we've got B-roll in here. It's all unstructured. None of this has been labeled by hand. It's just a bunch of files that came off the camera. We dumped it in here and ran all the ML against it. So And the other thing to note here is that this is the part that looks like an asset management system. We like to joke with our designer that she just made everything look too nice. But this is really here just for you to go in and for your developers during the R&D phase to understand whether or not the machine learning is working before you move into an integration phase where you're going to take all of this metadata that was generated and push it down into things like your fifth kind. One of the interesting things about this is that you can now move some of this R&D process to people that are not on your engineering team, if you like. It's easy enough to the point where you can actually pass this to like maybe people on your product team or anywhere else if they just want to experiment with the machine learning and see what results are possible to get back, to start formulating ideas for new features and things to add into tool chains and stuff like that. But anyways, let's get back into what the visualizer actually does. I'll grab this shot right here. This is a great one. So just a shot of us coming down, a trail, kind of showcasing how rough and tumble these tents are. Over here, the first thing that our visualizer can show you is the raw JSON. This is exactly the data that comes back from our APIs. This is to help with engineering so they know what to expect when using our APIs to integrate. Now, when you're trying to go through and actually, like understand whether or not you're gaining value and things like that, this is very difficult to read. So we give you just a nice human readable version of this. And from here, the big differentiator for us is that we're not a black box. We're storing all this data exactly how you're getting it from the providers. So we can go in and we can see all the results from Azure. Here we can see Google's label detection. It does a fantastic job in this shot. We can see here that it came in and it said, oh, this is a sport utility vehicle. It's in an off-road setting. It's in four-wheel drive. It actually picked out it's in Toyota. So go through and you can start to do your A/B testing where we also ran Azure against this, and we could go and look against like, oh, let's see how Azure is performing and things like that. The other thing that it's able to do is this is all stored in Elasticsearch, which is this really powerful search engine. And we just give you access to that. So you can start to look at and see like, so many of the media use cases are search-based. You can start to see if all of these searches and things like that are performing the way you expect, and you're getting kind of the context of your data that you want. So I'm just going to quickly move through a couple of the different use cases that we found in the media space that you can use all this ML for. The first thing is dealing with slates. So if I come in here and I just say, I want to do a search for scene DLU. Come in here. What's happening here is we're doing OCR text detection, and it's actually able to read the slate. So this is really great if you're looking at a dailies pipeline where you want to try to go in and automatically detect slate information, or at least get it primed for your dailies lab and things like that, or having to go back and label these shots and things like that. My favorite thing, and if anybody has done a lot of dailies work with things like that, let's look for scene DLU and then also say, okay, we want shot 009. This one's so fun. You pop open this shot, and this is like, from way back in my career where I was like doing lots of play polls and things like that and doing this stuff. This is, the bane of my existence. Starting this shot, hey, there's no slate. Where's the slate? Somebody forgot the slate. So it was tail slated. And the text detection is actually able to read this tail slate upside down and still get you to scene DLU shot 009. So whether you've got a bunch of old archival material, you're doing restorations or things like that, like you can very quickly come in and read off that slate information and things like that. Another use case is that part of our kind of secret sauce is that we are calculating similarity on each of these images, and we have some special plugins to make that more searchable. And what that means is that we're going through and we're actually analyzing the pixel data, and we can surface other clips that are similar. So if I do this, I'll fire off a similarity search. And we very quickly are getting all the other shots in here that look similar. And then we can actually change the thresholds and say, like, let's go up to 90 and get more dialed in on the amount of content that we're getting. Let's see another good one. Oh, finding your right shot. So this is a great example, and this goes into a lot of what Kyle was talking about, where the sum of the ML is much greater than the parts, and how you get this greater context when you start stacking it. So the name of the tent company is Tepui. So I'm going to do a search for that. You know, let's say I'm an editor, I'm trying to put together a commercial or something like that, and I want to find shots of the Tepui. This shows it pretty well. The OCR is actually able to read this logo, pull the text out of it, and now it's showing me any shot where the Tepui logo is in frame. We can see here we've got a bunch of different vehicles in this set of data. But I'm looking for the tent that's mounted on the Toyota. From here, if we pull this up, you can see down here, we ran Google's logo detection, and it was actually able to pull the logo off of the vehicle. So now we're really we're going from that giant haystack, and we're making it much smaller to try and find our needle. So now I've got all the clips in here that have the Tepui tent mounted on top of the Toyota. But I'm specifically, you know, I'm trying to put together a montage of like how rough and tumble these tents are and things like that. So I want to find an off-road shot. So we'll go in here and say like, okay, make sure that we've got the phrase off-road. Now from here, our label detection is finding that it's off-road vehicle and off-roading. So now I had this massive pile of B-roll and things like that, and I was very quickly able to get down to the Tepui tent mounted on top of the Toyota vehicle in an off-road setting. And this is with no hand labeling, nothing like that. Setting up this entire project took me maybe 8 minutes or so to just hook it up to the data, choose my ML, and push it all through. So it just kind of, it shows how if I was doing, you know, a proof of concept or something like that with this ML, if I had chosen any of these individually, if I had just done logo detection or just label detection or just text, I wouldn't have been able to get to the point where I had usable search results and had a full context of my data. You really need to go through and slice this data on all these different facets to get it to where you're really getting this good, rich metadata. And then the very last use case is we'll go into the speech to text stuff is really, really powerful. So on this shoot, we went down this trail called Lippincott Mine Road. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll type in the name of that road. We'll pull it up, and we've got 2 shots here. What we can actually do is we can dive deeper into this data. And we're actually storing all of the time-based metadata. So all of this ML, the majority of these pre-trained models that run on video are actually returning you in and out points for all of the detections. So we can see here that, you know, you can see it found vehicle and winter and mountains for the duration of the video. What's really neat is we're actually going to flag any point in the video that refers back to that search, and we can filter on that. So now I can see at these 2 points in the video, there was a mention of Lippincott Mine Road, and it was from Google speech to text. So that's, you know, the speech to text is just taking the audio file and transcribing it. Anytime we do any sort of audio transcription like that, we're actually going to generate a caption file as well that you can turn on. So I'll turn on GCP speech to text for the captioning, and then I'll jump to this point in the video. And here you can see that at this point, I was actually referring to Lippincott Mine Road. So extremely powerful for, let's say you have some longer form content or things like that. If you're looking for a fire extinguisher in a 10-minute clip, telling you that there's a fire extinguisher in there is not extremely helpful. This gives you the power to actually dive deeper into those videos and get your metadata in a more contextual sense where you can actually jump right in there and find exactly what you're looking for. So, let's say we went through this and I said, okay, this is all validated. This is great. Now I actually need to use this data. From here, all you do is you'll come down, figure out where you want to use it. It's very easy. You create an API key, grab our documentation, and then just integrate it directly into whatever your solution is downstream, whether that's proprietary, a fifth kind, anything like that. We have a REST API, and then we have a really nice Python library that's extremely easy to use. I'm going to pull up one example. We actually have an open source library where we have an open source application where it's really just a search bar that hooks up to the project and lets you do these searches, but it's a really nice jumping off point to building your own applications or just an example of how to integrate. And then we also have, pull this up. In that open source library, there's also an example of this Premiere plugin. So this plugin is hooked directly up to that project, through our API that we saw. I can do the same searches where I said, give me the Dupuy Toyota off-road. If I can type it, nailed it. Here we can grab this clip, say, yep, that's the right one, and hit the plus button. From here, grabs that file, directly drops it into my project, and now I've got it in the timeline and I'm going. So that's just generally shows you how you can go through, run through all of this R&D process very, very quickly. It allows you to understand if it's working. If the ML is not going to be right for you and you're going to fail, it allows you to fail very fast and very cheaply. And then has very easy entry points to then go through and integrate this downstream. That's it for our demo.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Danny. We do have a few questions from folks that are on the call today. So I'll toss a couple of those out for you and Kyle. And let's see, let's start. I've got a couple about sort of that initial data source setup. I think you sort of answered this in your demo, but just to make sure we're spelling it out. If all of my data is in AWS, can I still use Google Cloud ML, Azure ML? Those two things aren't really connected, right?
Absolutely. We don't care where your data resides or which provider you use. We want to be a broker for everything.
Got it. And I guess sort of related to that, do I have to have my own cloud provider accounts?
No, that's the really nice thing is that you'll get an account with us, and then we are basically hooking up to all of those providers and everything like that. So you don't have to go through any of that setup process or anything like that.
Excellent. Okay, got a couple of questions here at the data source level. So I know you mentioned and showed more of the visual content. How about handling of PDF, Word documents, XML files?
Yeah, we do Word documents and PDFs. And that's actually one of the use cases that I didn't show.
Got it. And it sounds like that's sort of one of the powerful pieces there is being able to tie that in, let's say those Word docs and PDFs with the results that you get from the visual APIs too, right?
Yeah, let's take like 1 minute and kind of show that off.
Yeah.
In this project, this is very obviously me. Oh wait, no, I'm not a video. It's not obviously me. This is me, but for the purposes of this demo material, I'm Jack Hodgins, random name generator. So I did a search for Jack Hodgins, and it's kind of nice. This shows you the ability to run this ML across all of your production content. This is actually coming up and it's pulling Jack Hodgins off of these scanned call sheets, and it's pulling Jack Hodgins from slates. And then additionally, one of the neat tools that I didn't touch on is that we can actually do face training. So it's able to pick up Jack Hodgins' face. So you can go through and actually like track your actors and things like that throughout the entire production, whether it's documents, videos, or images.
Excellent, very good. I've got a question about if you could give them a little bit more detail about the parallel jobs. Are those based on running the same type of model, or Amazon on one batch, Google on one batch? How does that work?
It's all file based. So basically, when a task picks up an individual clip or something like that, there's a pipeline attached to it. And if you really want to get under the hood, you can go in and start dialing that in and really running exactly the different processes you want. But basically, it picks up a file and then it just runs in serial and it processes all the different ML associated with that file. And then we're running X number of files in parallel.
Got it. So it can be tuned pretty specifically, but of course, I think one of the nice things for people that aren't interested in getting too deep into the weeds is out of the box, you can just kind of let it rip, right?
Absolutely, and it's a lot of the philosophy of how we built this is that we want, our big thing was like we want to do this in an hour, right? Like you can get your entire R&D process and start understanding whether it's working for you in just 1 hour. But we want to be open and flexible to whatever your sophistication levels are. So you can get really, really deep under the hood, or you can start slotting in more sophisticated tools anywhere in the ML lifecycle, and we're going to play nicely with that. Whether it's training your own models and using us to operationalize them, or the model training is done here, and you want to hook up, your own labeling tools and things like that. You can get really deep into the lifecycle, and we want to play well with everyone.
Excellent. I've got one more question from an attendee about whether you plan on supporting more ML providers.
Absolutely, and we're 100% customer and user focused on our feature development. So it's all about getting feedback from the community and understanding what needs to come next and supporting that. We very much are not trying to kind of shoot in the dark here. We want to hear what people are looking for and what they want to use. We're hearing a lot about various niche providers and things like that, and it's just all about picking what comes next.
Excellent, very good. Well, I think those were all of the questions that we got from the audience today. Maybe I'll just open it up one more time for you, Danny or Kyle. Anything that we didn't get to touch on yet that you wanted to leave before we wrap up today?
No, I think I covered everything, Kyle.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this pretty much covered it. I mean, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to jump on, join us today. And yeah, any further questions or anything else that you would need from us, we would definitely look forward to having a conversation and diving deeper with you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Danny and Kyle. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. We will be sending out a link to the recording of the webinar for everybody that registered, even if you weren't able to make it live with us. And we'll also include some information to get in touch with us quickly here if you guys would like to have a separate one-on-one conversation about how we can take a look at Boone Ai and how it makes sense in your specific use cases and workflows. All right, thanks everybody for joining. That'll conclude today's webinar.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much.